You've been saying these words your whole life, but almost no one ever told you what they actually do. You were taught to repeat them, not to realize what they were doing. The Lord's Prayer is not just a prayer. It is a spiritual technology hidden in plain sight. A hidden map, a living pattern buried inside words people repeat without thinking. Not a script to mumble, not a religious password, not something you rush through like you're trying to log into heaven before the session expires. Every line carries a code. Every phrase opens a layer. Not to some distant heaven after death, but to the kingdom within you now. Jesus did not say, "Repeat this until you sound holy." He said, "Pray like this." That matters more than most people realize, because this was never meant to be recited on autopilot. It was meant to activate you, to wake something up in you that religion often taught you to keep asleep. And once you see that, you cannot go back to saying it like nothing is happening. You realize this thing people treated like routine was never routine at all. It was a code. It was a return, a way back to the self beneath the fear, beneath the conditioning, beneath the identity the world handed you before you were old enough to question it. Or even simpler, it was never routine. It was a code, a return, a way back to the self that existed before fear taught you its name. So if these words always felt deeper than what you were told, trust that. If something in you stirred every time, trust that too. You're not imagining it. You're not forcing meaning into it. You're remembering. That was not your imagination. That was memory. And that is why this prayer matters. Because once it stops being a chant and starts becoming recognition, it begins undoing the lie that you are cut off, powerless, dirty, late, forgotten, or somehow outside the reach of the divine. It begins where it should begin, not with religion, not with doctrine, not with performance, but with breath, with the first line, "Our Father, who art in heaven." Most people pass that line like it is just a polite introduction. It is not. It is an activation. The first word already changes everything. Our, not my. Not me and my private little panic trying to reach God before the line disconnects. Our. That one word breaks the lie of separation. That one word already starts dismantling the illusion that you are alone. Prayer begins where isolation ends. Prayer begins the moment isolation loses its authority. The moment you say, "our," the separate self loosens its grip. You stop speaking as an isolated individual trying to get the attention of a distant God. You start speaking from communion, from belonging, from a larger body, a remembered family, the seekers, the wanderers, the ones who always carried a memory they could not explain, the ones who suspected there was something more and got tired of being told to stop asking. Our brings you back into the field. It reminds you that your soul was never designed to live as a sealed unit. Then comes Father, and this is where so much got flattened, mistranslated, and weaponized. Jesus was not speaking modern English. He was not giving people the image of a remote old man in the sky, handing out approval in tiny portions. The deeper root points to abun, a word with layers our usual translation barely holds. Father, yes, but also source, womb, origin, breath, the living ground out of which life emerges. Source, living origin, the breath behind breath, the intelligence from which all things rise. That means you did not come from shame. You did not begin as a mistake. You were not born trying to earn the right to exist. If a boon is true, then the version of you built on shame was never the original version. That changes the whole spiritual landscape, because if source is your origin, shame cannot be your deepest identity. You are not an orphan trying to behave your way back into love. You are not a rejected being clawing toward worth. You came from intention, from divine breath, from living origin. The deepest thing about you is not your wound, it is where you came from. Then, who art in heaven? This is where people usually leave the room and go straight to clouds, gates, distance, later, after death. But Jesus kept saying the kingdom is within. So heaven here is not mainly a place you go, it is the place in you that still remembers. Heaven is not far away. It is the part of you that never fully forgot, not untouched in the sense that life never hurt you. Most of us know better than that, but untouched at the deepest core, the part beneath the damage, the part that still carries the imprint of wholeness. You are not shouting upward into distance. You are turning inward toward what is still whole. Our Father, who art in heaven, is not the language of separation. It is the language of remembering. It is soul memory, not just mental memory. You are not trying to get God to come closer. You are waking up to the fact that separation was the illusion. That first line is not a greeting. It is a return to origin. Say it like someone who remembers where they came from. Then the prayer shifts into something even more electric. Hallowed be thy name. People often hear that as old religious poetry. Respectful, pretty, slightly dusty. But this line is doing much more than asking for reverence. It is about the name, as vibration, as living presence, as embodied sacredness. In the Hebrew tradition, the divine name was never just a normal word you tossed around casually. It pointed beyond language into breath itself. Not just a title, not just a label, a living pulse. The name was never just something to say, it was something to breathe. The divine name is not far from you. It is closer than your thoughts, hidden in breath, hidden in your lungs, hidden in the fact that your life is being breathed right now. The name was never just meant for your lips. It was meant to enter your lungs, your body, your way of being. That is why this line matters so much. Hallowed be thy name is not passive reverence. It is the awakening of sacred vibration in a human life. Let what is holy become alive in me again. Let the breath itself become temple. Let the sacred not stay trapped in theology, ritual, or fear. I've heard people say this prayer so fast it sounded like a Wi-Fi password they were trying not to forget. And I say that with affection because I've had my own moments of reading holy words while my brain was halfway into tomorrow's tasks. But this line will not let you stay on the surface. If prayer feels empty, it is often because the breath left before the words did. The words were never the whole thing. Breath, presence, remembrance, embodiment, these are the missing pieces. That is why the line has power. It retunes the instrument, it clears the static, it restores relationship. Then comes the line that should make every spiritually numbing system nervous. Thy kingdom come. If people really understood this line, whole systems would panic. Why? Because this is not a request to be rescued later. This is not a polite way of saying, please take me somewhere else after I die. It is an activation command. Jesus said, the kingdom is within. So when you say, thy kingdom come, you are not waiting for heaven to descend from somewhere far away. You are calling forth the divine order already seeded within you. You are summoning the blueprint back into expression. The kingdom does not only arrive for you, it arrives through you. That is why this line was always dangerous. It does not keep you passive. It does not flatter spiritual spectatorship. It does not tell you to wait quietly and hope holiness visits one day. It puts responsibility back into your hands, your body, your choices, your presence, your life. Thy kingdom come is a revolt against the counterfeit, against the false empire of numbness, fear, performance, domination, and sleep. It is the deeper self standing up inside the false self and saying, "No more exile, no more forgetting, no more living beneath what was planted in me." You become dangerous to every illusion that only works while you stay asleep. This is why people feel resistance when they begin taking this line seriously, because the old structures cannot hold their authority once the kingdom starts arriving through embodied people. You are not waiting for the kingdom. You are one of the places it is trying to arrive through. You are not here to escape the world. You are here to become the opening through which the kingdom enters it. Then the prayer goes deeper still. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. This line has been used for centuries to train people into passivity. Just submit, just accept. Just call everything God's will and stop asking hard questions. But that has done real damage, because it turns suffering into a script and confuses spiritual maturity with surrendering your discernment. That is not what Jesus is doing here. This line is not blind submission. It is sacred alignment. Not erase me, align me. Not make me smaller, make me true. Divine will here is not about a distant tyrant making choices for you. It is about divine intention seeking expression, the sacred impulse of the source becoming embodied in human life. So thy will be done means let what is deepest and truest move through me. Let the real take shape here. And on earth as it is in heaven is not about someday relocation. It is a blueprint for embodiment. Heaven is not asking to be admired, it is asking to be embodied. What is coherent in the invisible must become coherent in the visible. What is whole in spirit must become whole in life. What is true inwardly must become true outwardly, in speech, in action, in relationship, in attention, in the way you move through an ordinary Tuesday. This is not escape language, it is incarnation language. It says your life is meant to become a meeting place between dimensions, a place where what is unseen becomes seen. Then comes, give us this day our daily bread, and people often stop at the most surface meaning. Bread as food, bread as survival, bread as basic provision. And yes, that is part of human life. But Jesus is not reducing a sacred prayer to a heavenly grocery request. There is a deeper nourishment here, something beyond the physical, something closer to essential sustenance for the inner life. This is the bread of presence, the bread of remembrance, the bread that keeps the soul awake. We live stuffed and starving at the same time. That is modern life in one sentence. Full of input, empty of presence, drowning in content, starving for contact. A fed body can still carry a starving soul. That is why this line hits harder now than ever. It asks for the kind of nourishment that noise cannot provide. The kind that keeps you from living on adrenaline, distraction, performance, and false substitutes. It asks for what allows you to remain inwardly alive. And then it turns the mirror around. Because this is not only about receiving bread, it is about becoming it. Jesus called himself the bread of life. That was not a bakery metaphor. It was a revelation about presence, about becoming so aligned, so real, so full of living contact with the source that your very way of being nourishes other people. The world is starving for that kind of presence, not more noise, not more branding, not more empty certainty. Presence, reality, substance. Then the prayer reaches one of its hardest doors. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. This is not a polite moral lesson. It is spiritual law. Debt here points beyond money. It points to what remains unpaid in the soul, the unresolved loops, the charges still active, the resentment still feeding itself, the contract still running in the background of consciousness. Every grudge is a tether, every resentment is a loop. What you keep rehearsing keeps owning space inside you. The wound may not be your fault, but replaying it forever becomes its own prison. Forgiveness is the exit, not denial, not pretending it did not hurt, not calling evil good. Release. Freedom from the courtroom in your head where the same case keeps getting retried like one more inner argument will save you. It will not. Judgment is a loop. Release is the opening. And yes, sometimes the hardest person to forgive is the one in the mirror. Self-forgiveness is not letting yourself off the hook. It is refusing to spend the rest of your life becoming your own jailer. Resentment feels like power for a minute, then it starts eating the house from the inside. That is why this line matters. Without release, the inner life stays clenched. The bread cannot nourish what rage keeps sealed shut. Then comes one of the most serious warnings in the whole prayer. Lead us not into temptation. Most people hear that and think simple bad behavior. Avoid the obvious sin, avoid the obvious mistake. But the deeper danger is subtler than that. Real temptation often does not arrive looking ugly. It arrives looking shiny, efficient, deserved. Temptation rarely says, destroy yourself. It says, take the shortcut, you've earned it. That is why this line is bigger than rule-keeping. It is about false light, counterfeit crowns, premature power, the platform before the purification, the power before the maturity, the image before the substance. The most dangerous temptation is the one that flatters your wound, the offer that tells the unhealed part of you, you can skip the refining, you can have the crown now. Jesus in the wilderness was not just resisting pleasure, he was resisting the shortcut, the kingdom without the cross, the appearance without the process. This line is not asking to be kept away from all difficulty, it is asking for discernment in the fire. Do not let ego dress itself up as destiny. Do not let the glittering lie rename my calling. Let me pass through the fire without building my life inside the lie. Let the fire refine me. Never let the lie rename me. And then the final seal, deliver us from evil. This line has often been shrunk into a vague request for protection from scary things out there. But evil here is far more intimate than people want to admit. It is not only external darkness, it is also the hurtful force that lives through false identity, inherited wounds, shame, distortion, trauma loops, and the voice that says, "This is who you are now." It is the inner captor, the parasite narrative, the self built around pain and then mistaken for the real self. So, deliver us from evil is not weak. It is a summons, a ripping away, a reclamation. Deliver me from the shame-based self. Deliver me from the identities that trauma built. Deliver me from the voice in my head that sounds like condemnation and calls itself truth. Deliver me from every lie that learned to speak in my own voice. That is what this line is doing. It is not just asking for protection, it is rejecting false identity. It is renouncing the names pain gave you. You are not your trauma. You are not your shadow. You are not the echo of every wound in your bloodline. You are the one this cycle was never meant to survive. And this is exactly why the prayer matters so much in modern life. We are living in a time of fragmentation. People are overfed on content and underfed on presence. We scroll through pain. We absorb 20 opinions before breakfast. We text while chewing. We half listen to people we love. Then we call that normal. Our attention is split. Our nervous systems are tired. Our inner life is constantly interrupted. And in that kind of world, even sacred language can go flat. Not because it has no power, but because it is being handled without presence. We say holy things with dissociated mouths. The words are sacred. The presence is missing. Our mouths keep moving. Our inner life never arrives. We read lines that once shook deserts and temples like they are terms and conditions. That is not an insult. It is just an honest diagnosis of how numb modern life can make us. I know what it is to say familiar words while the mind is already running ahead into tasks, worries, deadlines, noise. Many people do. That is why the issue now is not that we need more information. We do not. We are drowning in information. The deeper crisis now is not lack of religion, it is lack of embodiment, not lack of information. Lack of contact, not lack of spiritual language, lack of lived reality. People do not need more words. They need the words to become real again, and that happens when presence returns, when breath returns, when honesty returns, when you stop performing spirituality and start actually inhabiting it. Then something startling happens. Old words stop sounding old. Familiar phrases come alive again. A line you have heard 1,000 times suddenly lands like it was waiting for this exact season of your life. The prayer is no longer background sound. It becomes mirror. Medicine, fire, confrontation, comfort, command, return. That is why this prayer matters now. It can pull you out of reflex and back into participation, out of noise and back into contact, out of empty repetition and back into living reality. This prayer was never small. People were taught to say it's small. Here is the truth underneath the whole thing. The Lord's Prayer was never meant to keep people calm. It was meant to wake them up. It was never a string of polite religious lines. It was a sequence of awakening hidden inside plain speech. It starts by breaking the lie of separation. It takes you back to source. It turns heaven from a distant place into an inward reality. It restores the name as breath. It calls the kingdom into the present. It aligns your life with what is real. It feeds what is alive in you. It unlocks release. It warns you about false light. And in the end, it tears you out of the identities pain tried to make permanent. By the time you reach the end of it, the whole prayer has changed in front of you. It is no longer a script. It is a hidden map, a spiritual technology, a living code, an activation command, a way back to your original self. Not the version shaped by fear, performance, religion, shame, or trauma. but the one formed in truth before the world started naming you. So no, you probably will not say it the same way again. Good, you should not. Some words are meant to be repeated. These words were meant to wake the part of you that repetition put to sleep, not so you could learn something new, but so you could remember what your soul has been trying to tell you all along. You all along. You all along. You all